Hey, Joe Steadman. I'm going to do a review of Supreme Commander by GMT. I got it set up in my classroom here under some plexiglass. Let me give you a quick overlook of what it is, then I'll talk about the game itself. Alright, so you can see here it's a grand strategy game. It's called the Supreme Commander. This is version 2.0 and I'll explain that in a minute. The designer is Dan something. What's his name? You see in the back here, got the designer is Dan Holt. He is on Consim and Board Game Geek, constantly answering any questions you might have, which I love. Alright, so here's the game. It's a grand strategy game. It comes with all these charts, diplomacy charts, this here. It's going to have this full color rule book. It's going to have these double-sided CRT and all that you need. It's going to come with this printout from GMT that has the reinforcement schedule, and these are some printouts I made myself. I got off Board Game Geek, just some helpful hints, you know, reminders and things I printed out. And it comes with two maps. So this is actually the small scale map, so you can see the whole world at once. And then on the back side of this is a blown up version. And then there's a second map, which is actually right, I have it folded in half right here because I'm using the turn record track off of it. And you put those together to make a huge map that would take up bigger than the, you know, about the size of this table. But I like the small size so I can. So you can see that each country has these things here. It's grand scale. There's low counter density. It's not too scripted. There's some triggered events that are the Winter War and things like this. America entering on a certain turn. The weather track. Things that, you know, are going to be a little bit scripted, but for the most part, it's you can do what you want. There's some elegance to this game where it's not too clunky, I call it, where there's a whole bunch of little tiny rules. But there's a few small rules that give it some chrome, some polish I like. Then I'll go over those in a minute. Your basic counters are going to have, you know, this is a core, a tank core, nothing on the back side. Then you're going to have the armies as well. So let's see here. So like here's an army. You know, it's you flip it over when it takes damage. All right. And then there's an abstract way they do the fighters and the bombers. They have these boxes. So here's the South Air box. Over here is the East Air box. Up here you see all these fighters are all up in the West Air box. And you put your stuff in there, and rather than putting them on a map. And there's some rules like, you know, you have to be within range of one of your cities. If you want to use your fighters out of your box, you can't just use them anywhere on a map. If it's in this sector, you still have to have, and you want to make an attack, you still have to be within so many hexes of one of your friendly controlled cities before you can attack one of his units, things like that. And I really like the naval aspect of this. You're going to have these surface fleets, but you're also going to have these decoys. So on the backside, when it's your turn, depending on who has the initiative, you're going to lay down your little support fleets. Alright? Whoever won the initiative can decide to go first or second, and then you put down your support fleets. Right, like this. So you're not going to know because if there's any dummies or not. And then I have to match. I'm going to do what I want to do. So I'm going to put mine here. So when we flip them over, oh, there's going to be a battle here. But if I would have put over here, it's a decoy. You know, I wasted stuff here. I don't know. I have any idea. And that's tracked here. Let's look at the German one here. So you have this keeps track of your technologies. So you start off at tech levels. Like the Germans start off with tech level. You get some choices. But you have your submarine tech level. If you have a +1 tech level, you get a decoy. If you can spend your money in this game, which is tracked here on the card as well, you can upgrade your technology level. And it's kind of expensive, but like if you come down to here at a +3, you get 2 decoys for the submarines. You got your surface tech level, your air tech level, your tank tech level, and your infantry tech level. And all the countries have this, which is a neat way to do this here. I use these little nuts here to represent strategic moves available. You know, if you're familiar with big games like this, you're familiar with strategic moves. And then here's your diplomacy chart. And diplomacy is pretty elegant in this as well. It starts off, this is where it starts, the basic setup, and then you spend your money again to influence different countries to go one way or the other, depending on what they'll do. All right, how they'll, like this here, the Greeks, they start off as pro-ally, but the Germans could make them neutral. Then you could actually have them start going pro-German. I mean, there's different ways. You can just spend money there and it causes your opponent to react to what you do. Phase track. So you start off with strategic phase, where you collect your money, then you do this based on the initiative, you place your fleets, naval combat, then sub-combat. Subs, if they survive, you can use them for traditional campaign game where you take away money from the opponent based on what you roll, based on how many subs you have and the technology of your subs. Then you put your reinforcements, then there's some Lend-Lease and different money to other people, just all broken down here, it's good. And then you go to player turn. So Axis side completes his player turn first. Organize, purchase, diplomacy, do things on this. Combine and break down units, make them back into armies or corps or however you want to do it. Strategic bombing. All right, so you place money on city. There's a whole sequence of events for this. Then move, combat, follow-up combat, strategic movement, and then political. And political is declaration of wars. So you can always declare war at the end of the turn for free, but if you want to declare war at the beginning of the turn to kind of get a surprise attack off, it costs money. And you have to pay to do that with your money again. You slide the little money marker up and back and forth. And then once the German's done, the Allied player will go, and then there's the final mutual phase. Check for victory. Air units are all flipped back over. Naval units are put away and all flipped back over. So let me give you some thoughts on this game. Well, the map, I really like the map. I like the option of having two different maps, a full scale and a small scale. I like the small scale personally. It's not too cluttered. The weather effects are easy to figure out. Everything's cumulative in this, which is different than normal, traditional, I guess. So there's a CRT for combat, but it's not based on odds. It's based on the differential, which is kind of interesting. I like that. But you get pluses for your tech level, for your terrain, for your number of men you have, different things like that, what time of year it is, and then you just figure out the differential, which is kind of cool. It works. It's different. I like it. The naval combat is pretty abstract, but at the same time it's not, because you get to roll dice, you get to put little markers out, and you get to put these decoys, which adds a whole new element to the game that you don't traditionally see. You get that. Normally you have that godlike knowledge where everything is and you can perfectly block, but here you can have decoys, and so the German player might have a bunch of decoys, and if you guess wrong, boom, he's hitting you hard for your money that turn because you didn't sink any of his subs and they're all out there hitting your merchants. So that's pretty cool. Another thing is that ground combat, only one unit can attack at a time, so all the other surrounding units just add a plus factor. It kind of reminds me of a block game in a way. That's kind of neat too. You don't have to figure out all the different units together, then divide it out. Another thing that adds to the removes the godlike abilities of the players is that you have to declare all your attacks at once. You put little markers on the board where all your attacks are going to be, so you can't do the whole, well, let me see how this pans out, and then I'm going to attack here and see how that pans out and change my mind. Once you commit, you commit. And if something goes really well, you can't say, oh, now I want to do this. Nope, you didn't think you were going to roll that well, and you're not going to take the chance of putting those markers down. So I like that. It makes me have to actually think when I'm declaring where my combats are going to be. I can't just, go as a, one at a time and get lucky. Now, the other thing I mentioned before, but I like the fact it's not too scripted. There's a few triggered events, the Winter War, different things, the Americans coming in. So, but you have more flexibility than some of the other games that are more scripted, meaning that you have to follow a certain sequence. One thing that I would say about this game, and as a negative thing, it's not really negative though. It's very unforgiving, meaning if you don't make the right purchases and if you don't do the right thing early in the game, it's gonna cost you the game later. So what I suggest is play a few. You can play the first couple turns in a couple hours. It's not much to do because there's not a lot of stuff on the map, and you can play the first 2 years in a couple hours. And so play that a few times with your opponent just to get the gist of the game, how it works, and then set it all up again, start over fresh, shake hands, and play for real. Because there's going to be some things that you're not going to realize until after you've played. And I always have that philosophy when I play war games: is if the outcome is given, and I'm playing to have fun, then why would we spend the next 3 hours already knowing that a mistake early on cost me the whole game? Let's just reset and have a more of a challenge. I don't like the Super Bowl this year was horrible. Like why I turned it off at halftime. Why bother watching? I want to see that fight to the end. All right. So with this, it's unforgiving. Make sure you understand. Play a few practice rounds, and then play for real. So I like normally I like tactical games. And I like the standard combat series games where division level and these operational level games. But this grand strategy type game, I just have a soft spot for them. I do like them. I like to play them with my son. He's 13. I have one other guy I can play with, and so even my 13-year-old was pretty quickly able to grasp most of the content. He likes Axis and Allies, and he likes this computer game called AAA, which is a copy of Axis and Allies. So he likes these games. He was able to pick this up pretty quickly with some help from Dad, and we can play a good game. This is going to be my new grand campaign game with my son, and that I keep at the house. This will probably replace that block game I have, Europe Engulfed, which I like Europe Engulfed too. But this is easier. This is less to worry about, less clunkiness. So there you go. So the Supreme Commander by GMT. One last thing I was to say is when the game was first released, it had a lot of mistakes in it. I don't know if there's a production mistakes or they had some difficulties. I don't know, but GMT did they're the best. I love GMT. They came back and they fixed them all. So if you already own the game, they mailed you out replacement parts, a whole new rule book, new maps, new charts. Counter sheet or some counters to be fixed, and so the version 2.0 of the game has been all reworked. All the errata has been fixed, for the most part, and everything's been cleaned up. So if you buy a copy now, it should come with all that stuff. And if you have an old copy, then GMT can get you what you need. So it shows that they stand by their product, which I like. So there you go. I recommend this game.